Hello. So welcome back to module 4, that is Azure SQL Data Security. So Sakshi, I hope you understood about storage account security.
Yes, Meena, I have understood about storage account security, but here my little concern is as we are running database on different versions, but I just wanted to know how I can secure my SQL database.
Let's see what is Azure SQL Security. We have different layers in Azure SQL Security. The first layer is network security. In this layer, we have two rules. That is, first one is IP firewall rule, which grant access to the database on the originating IP of each request. And the second is virtual network rule, which enables Azure SQL Database to only accept communication that are sent from selected subnet inside a virtual network. The second layer is access management. In this, we can give authentication to selected users. Azure SQL Database and SQL Managed Instance support two types of authentication. The first authentication is SQL authentication. In this type of authentication, the server admin must be specified when the server is being created. Using these credentials, a server admin can authenticate to any database on that server or instant as the database owner. The second is the Azure Active Directory authentication. That is like Azure Active Directory authentication allows the administrator to centrally manage the identities and permissions of database user along with other Azure services in one central location. This results in minimization of password storage and enable centralized password rotation. So the third layer is threat protection. It helps in maintaining the compliances with security standards by recording database event to a audit log in a customer's own Azure account or a storage account. In this, it allows user to monitor ongoing database activities, as well as it helps to analyze and investigate historical activities that must have taken place in order to identify potential threats or suspected. So suspect the violence, any security violence which might take place. So if the attacker can map your actions, you can also map attacker's activity. So for this, you have an advanced threat protection, which Azure provides you, in which it creates alert message when an suspicious activity, such as SQL injection or potential data infiltration or brute force attack takes place, or any other suspicious activity, such as to catch escalations or any breach into the credentials. Okay, the fourth layer is information protection. So in this type of protection, you have different options that like transport layer security or key management with Azure Key Vault, and the other option might be always encrypted or the dynamic data masking. So we'll see one by one all the options. So let's go to the console.
One, two, three.
So now we are in the portal of Azure. So I have already created database. So when you are creating a database, the SQL server is created by default. So I'll go to the server. The first security feature that you can find here is access control IAM. Just to you should remember one thing, that you have this option only in SQL Server. You do not get in database. SQL database does not contain this feature. So by giving this access, you are not giving access to the underlying database, but you're only providing access to the server and the database for the configuring purpose. So here when I am trying to add a role, add role assignment, I'll just type SQL. So in SQL, you have three types of roles. You can assign any of the role to the user. So we'll go back. Okay. So after this, you have the other option for the security is auditing. In auditing, you can see there are two types of auditing in SQL Server. So what happens here is, if any changes takes place by your authorized user, the person at your the user or the person who is using your database, you can audit from here. You can the logs can be created and can be stored to your storage, to the existing storage account or any new storage account as you want. And over here, auditing of Microsoft support operation, if there is any changes by done by the Microsoft engineer, any kind of changes like he's resetting something or adding an antivirus or something. So you, if you enable this, you can also generate logs for that. So the other thing over here is, in database auditing, you can find the, you can only audit the changes that is done by the your user. So you have an option for like, if I'm storing the database, you can store both the logs in different accounts. You can store the auditing the logs that is created in SQL database to a different account, and the auditing logs which is generated in server SQL Server, you can store it in different account. The next option that we have here is firewalls and virtual network. You can add client IP address. Only those clients whose IP address comes in this range, whatever the range you are setting, can access the database. The next option that we have is transparent data encryption. Transparent data encryption is like, which means encryption in transit. This ensures that all the data is encrypted in the transit between the client and the server during any transaction which might take place. So you can add your customer managed key if you want over here. If any key that you have created can be added over here. And similarly, you have an option in database as well. Transparent data encryption, where you're encrypting the data which is currently on by default. The next security is the next security tool is Active Directory. So over here, what you do is you're giving access to the user to become an admin. You can set your own admin. I'll just click on set admin. Okay, so over here you have Active Directory. Like you can set any of the user as the admin, which has the role for the admin can add the user and also you can set any of the user as an admin. Like if I'm just choosing somebody who can just be an admin. Okay, maybe Aditi as an admin. I'll just set it so the person will become an admin. Aditi you can see the message over here that Aditi has become an admin. Similarly, we saw it in storage system, we had a lock system. So similarly, you have a lock system in server where you can lock your system such that nobody can delete your account. Nobody can delete your server. So if I'm just setting a server lock, nobody will be able to delete my server. So now we'll go to database. We You can also set a different lock over here. And what happens is when you set a lock at your server, by default, the lock is also set on your database. Now you have an option in database like dynamic data masking. Dynamic data masking is where you can actually hide your data. It limits the sensitive exposure by masking it to non-privileged user. Like if you have a credit card number or a debit card number or an account number, only the last four digit may show. You can hide all the other number, all the credential will be safe. Then okay. Okay. So the other feature is data discovery and classification, where you can actually discover your data. Like you can class, like which is confidential, or you want to keep it public. You can you can discover from this. So now to set the classification, like to set some of the data as confidential, like if in an organization, as I took it before, like the name or email IDs that can be that can be public, but the confidential data is like the national identity number or the account number or any other credentials, important details, you can add sensitivity label to it. So you can select the schema name, then the table name, whichever table you have it on your database, and then the column name. Like if it is an account number, you have that column name put up here. Then you can set the label, like what is it about. You can put a label about it, and then you can set the sensitivity label, like if it is confidential, highly confidential, such that. So now we have seen all the security properties on the portal. So let's go back and see. So we just saw that Active Directory, where you can set the admin, set your own admin. Any user you can set as an admin. And then you have another option, that is SQL Database Firewall. This is a fire where you're allowed. So over here you have SQL Database Firewall, where we just saw that you can you can put a range to the IP address, like only those selected subnets can be accessed. A subnet that comes under that range can access. Then database auditing, as we saw, we can create auditing logs, which like in server we saw we had two types of auditing. One could be the Azure SQL auditing, that takes in within our organizations employee or the users. And the other is auditing of Microsoft support, which is the backhand support. And discovery classification, we just saw we can set the credential sensitivity. We can set the sensitivity label to the different columns of the table. And then we saw the vulnerability access assessment, where you can assess that if somebody is, like I told you, like if the attacker can map our it can audit our work, that our whatever we are doing, so we can similarly audit the work that an attacker is doing. So the next thing we have here is advanced threat protection. So as we just saw, if any SQL injection or any brute force attack takes place, we will get an alert message. So dynamic data masking, as I discussed, it limits sensitive data exposure, like the account number, if only the initial digits may show and the rest may be hidden. Then we have the transparent data encryption, which is again which means encryption in transit. This ensures that all the data is encrypted. Then other feature we have is always encrypted. Always encrypted in it is a feature that the data is always encrypted, which means that the encrypted data can only be decrypted for processing by the client application, which with access to the encryption key. This encryption key will never be exposed to SQL database or SQL managed instance. It can only be stored in Windows certificate store or Azure Key Vault. So then this is the implementation, and this is SQL database delete protection. As we saw, we can set a lock to the server as well as the database. You can also add an extra security to your database by adding an extra lock on your SQL database. So now we saw that what is the security that Azure offers to secure our database. So now we'll come back after a short break and see what Azure provides for app security.